So let's start with the core navigation tools. Now, as the name suggests, these are the tools that you use to navigate through the image. And the first one right here is the hand tool. Now you have already used it, but we will go a little bit deeper into that. Okay, so let's say you were removing blemishes. So let's zoom in, and you know the shortcut for it, right? So holding the Control or Command and the spacebar, and then when you drag it to the right, it zooms in. You drag it to the left, it zooms out. But for that, you need to go to the zoom tool right here and just make sure scrubby zoom is checked. If it's not checked, this won't work. You would be creating those rectangles and it would zoom into that rectangle. So make sure it is checked. It's way more easier that way. Now let's say you want to remove the blemishes. So first of all, let's create a brand new layer by clicking on the new layer button right in there. And then let's name this layer blemishes. It's always important that we organize the layers, name the layers properly, so that when you're working with, let's say, 50 layers, you won't get confused if they are named as layer 1, layer 2, layer 1 copy, so on and so forth. So let's select the regular healing brush tool right there. And the way it works is pretty simple. First of all, make sure sample current and below is selected so that it samples the current layer, which has nothing, and also the layer which is beneath it as well. If you set it to just current layer, there is nothing there, right? So let's choose current and below. And let's say you zoomed in, you hold the Alt key or the Option key to sample an area similar to the blemish area, but without the blemishes. It samples that area, click to take a sample and paint over that. It covers the blemish. It samples the texture from the area that you sampled from and it replaces that. So let's say you were holding the Alt key or the Option key, click on it to take a sample, paint on it to just remove the blemish, and you were doing these process. And you did this area and you want to move to other area, you can always use the hand tool. You can go to the hand tool, you can move it and then go back again to the healing brush tool, right? Now instead of doing that, there's a shortcut for it. And the shortcut is simply holding the space bar, right? Once you're done in that area, you can always hold the space bar. It momentarily turns to the hand tool, then you can move there, release the space bar, it gets you there. Okay. Now let's select the hand tool and let's see what properties are at the top. The first property right here is 100%, which means it zooms your image 100%. Right now, how much zoom is there for the image? How much have we zoomed in? Take a look at the top, 305%. If you want to zoom in 100%, just click on 100% and it's going to zoom in 100%, as you can see right there. Now, what is 100% zoom? 100% zoom is a zoom in which each pixel of your image corresponds to each pixel of your monitor. Make sense? No? Let's say you have an image which has a resolution of 100 by 100 pixels. It has 100 pixels along the width and 100 pixels along the height. Let's say your monitor also has 100 pixels along the width and 100 pixels along the height. If you open the image in full screen in that monitor, every pixel of that image corresponds to every pixel of that monitor. Make sense? That is 100% zoom. If we zoom out, it would be lesser than 100%. If we zoom in more than that, more than the full screen of that monitor for that image, it would be more than 100%. Make sense? Each pixel of the image corresponds to each pixel of your monitor. That is 100% zoom, and 100% zoom is highly recommended for sharpening. So let's say if we create a stamp visible layer at the top, which is a merged layer of everything that you see in the canvas by pressing Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E, right? And go to filter, convert for smart filters, hit OK. Now this is a smart object so that we can change the values of the filter later. Let's go to filter, sharpen, and then let's say we apply smart sharpen right there. So let's say we are sharpening and we have increased the amount all the way high, and then all we have to do is to control the radius. So we take the radius all the way to the left and we slowly and gradually increase the radius. See, this is getting too much, right? So we will decrease it. We will choose the radius where it doesn't have any halos, doesn't look awkward. All right. Now this much looks right. Radius of 1.8 or 2 looks right. in 100% zoom. If we zoom in too much, we might see a lot of halos, we might see a lot of artifacts, and we might not be a better judge of it. We might zoom in and we might add too much or too less radius. All right, we might zoom out too much and then might add a lot of radius, because right now we cannot see any difference. So we keep adding radius and we stop right in there at about 7 or maybe 5 or 6. But then when you zoom in, it looks totally bad. So 100% zoom is the standard when you're sharpening. And it's also very important when you're just judging or looking at the details. Okay, so hit cancel. This is just to show you how important 100% zoom is. Now there are other buttons as well. Fit screen, click on that. It fits the screen. It makes sure all of the image is showing up and it fits the screen. And there's a shortcut for it. No matter what you're doing in Photoshop, how much you have zoomed in, zoomed out, or images here and there, you can always press Ctrl or Command 0 to fit the screen. There's the shortcut for it. You don't have to press this button. The other button is something that we seldom use, and that is fill the screen. It'll make sure everything is filled in. Click on that. It just fills in everything. Okay, so fit screen and fill screen. It makes sure that every space is filled. Press Ctrl or Command 0 to fit the screen. Now there's this interesting button called Scroll All Windows, and we're gonna get back to that later. But before that, let's talk about the zoom tool. Now we already know that if we have scrubby zoom checked, we can hold the Ctrl or Command and the spacebar, drag right or left to zoom in and zoom out. If you don't have that checked, it's gonna do that crazy zoom. All right, make sure it is checked. Now keep in mind, some graphic cards do not allow that, and this might be grayed out for some computers. Now there is this another checkbox which is essential, and we'll get back to that in a moment. There is fit screen, fill screen, same thing right here, and there's this 100% zoom right here as well. Zoom in and zoom out tools separately. So if you just want to click zoom in, and if you just click, it's going to zoom in. If you click on the zoom out, if you click zoom out, that's not the way any of us do it. But anyway, those are there. Now let's talk about zoom all windows, because it corresponds to scroll all windows of the hand tool as well. So for that, we have to open some other images. So I have opened these two images in Photoshop. This is the first one, this is the second one. And let's say we have to select one out of these two and choose which one is the best for our purpose. So you can always arrange these two documents by going to Window, Arrange, and then 2 up vertical or 2 up horizontal. I've arranged them. Now, let's say you are in the zoom tool, right? And if you check zoom all windows, and then when you zoom in, both of them will zoom in simultaneously. All of the windows will zoom in. Even if you hold the Ctrl or Command and the spacebar and then zoom in, they will zoom in together. Now, if you hold the space bar and move through the image, they don't move together. How do we do that? That's when the scroll all windows comes in handy. So if you go back to the hand tool and check scroll all windows, now when you hold the space bar and move, see, both of them are moving. If you want to align something, you can uncheck that. So let's say you want to align something and then compare, then you want to check that back in, and then you want to compare, you want to zoom out and see how they work. Now if you press the shortcut, now keep in mind, if you press the shortcut Ctrl or Command minus and Ctrl or Command plus, it's not going to do it together. Even if in the zoom tool you have zoom all windows checked in, you have to do it with the shortcut Control and spacebar and drag it to the left to zoom in, zoom out, sorry, and drag it to the right to zoom in, or with the zoom tool directly. Anyway, we always use this, which is holding the Control and the spacebar. This is a really great way to compare your images. Now you already know that zoom tool is very important when it comes to retouching. Let's say we are working on the skin on the face. Right here, we are just maybe removing the blemishes and the wrinkles, and instantly we want to move to other areas of the image. So instead of holding the spacebar and then moving there slowly and gradually to the arm, to this area, it's so time taking, isn't it? Instead of doing that, there's one more way to do it. Let's say you're zoomed in to this area and you want to move to the arm. How do you do that? You don't have to crawl through. This can also happen with the zoom. So hold the H key, right? H for hockey, hold the H key, then just click and hold. And as you do that, it gives you a bird's eye view, right? And it gives you a rectangle. Then you can position the rectangle to an area where you want to zoom and then release it. It zooms in right there. Again, I'm going to show it to you. Hold the H key, click and hold, and then release it. This is actually one of the greatest tricks in retouching that a lot of people don't know about. Now, we have already talked about the hand tool, the move tool to help us navigate through the image. Now, there's one more essential tool that helps you rotate the image, and we have already talked about it in the previous lesson, and that is the rotate view tool. So let's say you're retouching in a particular direction and it's difficult for you to paint that way. So all you have to do is to click and hold on the hand tool and select the rotate view tool. It allows you to rotate your canvas momentarily. It just doesn't do anything to the image. It doesn't rotate the image, does nothing. It just rotates your view. That's it. It's just like rotating the canvas on the easel. That's all there is to it. And whenever you want to reset, you can click on reset view. And similarly right here, you have rotate all windows. So if you have multiple images open, you can rotate them all together. Okay, that would be fun. Why not? Let's try it. So let's open both of these. And then if you just arrange them by going to window, arrange, and then to a vertical, you have the rotate view tool, rotate all windows. Both of them rotate. Funny. Let's reset the view. Now, there's one more thing when it comes to the zoom tool. Let's say we have this open not as tabs, but they are just flying around here and there, right? Just like this. Now, if you have the zoom tool selected and if you uncheck zoom all windows, you can always check resize windows to fit. So let's say you make these bigger. If I try to zoom in, if I just press once, see, it fits. If I zoom out by pressing Control or Command minus, see, the window gets smaller too. If I zoom in, Control or Command plus, the window gets larger too. Of course, it gets larger to a limit of the size of the screen, but you get the point. The window gets smaller and larger as well. If I uncheck that, none of that will happen. See, making it smaller or larger is not affecting the window size. All right. So that is something that might be useful, might not be useful, but I just wanted to put it out there. So there you go, the core navigation tools in Photoshop that help you navigate through the image. I hope this lesson helped you. Let's move on to the next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.